Buju, Shukyongatuk Indigo, Makwa and Dodam, Wabaguni, Sagai Gun, Anishinaabemowin Indoji, Wenang Gang Inda. Hello, my name is Crystal Harrison Collin, and I'm from Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation, and I currently live here in Sulakot. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands of the Lacrosse First Nation and Grand Council Treaty 3 territory. Today's show is about sharing and learning our Indigenous culture. And the first story out of Fort McMurray does just that.
I loved my culture when I was a little girl. I wanted to know who I was, and I felt a real deep connection to it. And my mom made a point of fostering that interest, that curiosity, that drive in me to know more about who we were. She would always buy me books, buy me movies, buy me little brown dolls. She did what she could to help me understand who I was. My community was hurting at that time. We were still very much healing and getting to know who we were collectively. No one was talking about, that historical trauma. No one was talking about the Indian Act. I knew nothing of this land connection. I knew nothing of my land. I knew nothing of my people. I just saw hurt. All I wanted to do was get as far away as I could. Met my partner. We fell in love very quickly, very unexpectedly, and we got pregnant with our first child. And I started to look back on my life, and I realized I have nothing to offer my child as an Indigenous person. So I did what I knew best, what I was taught when I was little. I started to read books again. When I started to really take the time to learn who I was and to listen to those old people and listen to our language, my mind was just blown wide open to how beautiful and rich and sophisticated our culture was and is. It is still today that way. We planned a hide camp last year. It was sort of the first of its kind in the region. We invited knowledge keeper Marina Nokaho from Chippewa Prairie First Nation, and she guided us in fleshing and scraping and preparing a moose hide. And this journalist, one of these journalists, came out for a visit, and she observed everything. She took pictures. She was writing a story for one of the schools, and she said, "Wow, what a beautiful experience. These are great survival skills." And I said, "Yeah, they are good survival skills, but this is a lesson in identity. No, we're not going to finish a moose hide here today. It takes a long time to finish a moose hide, but they're going to know a little bit about who they are by banging on that moose hide, by scraping that moose hide, hearing those tools, working together to make it happen. It's who we are, and that's how we're going to heal, We're going to heal through our culture and through our language." I'm very proud of my children because they know who they are. And as they grow up, they'll know their responsibility as ancestors. And that's what our culture always made a point of raising wise children. The old people would sit with the young people. Say like a 90-year-old person is sitting with a 10-year-old person, and then that 10-year-old ends up carrying 100 years of knowledge within them. We made wise children, wise babies, wise people, and wise people are the ones who are, they're going to change the world.
I am a jingle dress dancer. I dance for healing and wellness. As the matriarch of my family, passing knowledge down from one generation to another is my cultural responsibility. I teach my children and grandchildren that dancing heals. It was our ancestors' way of celebrating life. It is our way. Dance and ceremony was taken from us through colonization, and it's important that we reclaim it as a people, because dancing is our way of healing. Staying active and loving my body is ceremony. I'm honoring my spirit and my ancestors. Up next, we head to Vernon, BC, where we find out how the captain of the Vernon Tigers uses sport to connect to his roots.
It's a very hard sport to play.
When you're on the floor and you're running, you have to keep moving or you get nailed.
It's good for the mental toughness.
He knows the history. He's heard it from me his whole life.
It's a literal translation in Mohawk is little brother of war.
I'm super proud to be Indigenous, and lacrosse is the way that I can embrace my culture. I'm 20 years old and I've been playing lacrosse for about 12 years. My stepdad, he got me into it.
It was my favorite sport growing up. Naturally, you want your son to try sports you like, so you have something in common.
We bonded over lacrosse quite a bit. When I learned that lacrosse was originally an Indigenous sport, I feel like it just made me that much closer with the game.
He was probably like 9 years old, and I was sitting in a dressing room with his team, and I asked the kids, does anyone know the history of lacrosse? Does anyone know where lacrosse started? And surprisingly, not one kid in that dressing room knew where lacrosse came from.
Comes from the east. The Mohawk people used it as part of their way with their communities to heal disputes amongst themselves. They would prepare for war by playing the game. It would go on for days and go on for, miles and miles of just play and play. It's that endurance factor. But I think overall the physicality and the mental toughness is still the same.
I think it's extremely important for Jacob to have the tie to his roots. He's got a sense of pride playing lacrosse, and you can see it.
I'm very proud to be First Nations, and although I haven't really practiced the culture elsewhere, lacrosse is my way to connect to my roots.
For Indigenous people, it has more to it. It was a way of pride and having that pride, and I think it's a way to hold on to it. And I think as a game, it's a powerful game for people to create their own identity, because on the lacrosse floor, everybody's equal until you start playing.
I love lacrosse. I'm happy with that as a way to connect through my culture, and I'll be playing that for the rest of my life.
But I always had an interest in coaching Indigenous youth because growing up as a younger kid, I always wondered what it would be like to have an Indigenous mentor. That being said, I knew that when I got older, I wanted to make a difference in my community and in First Nations kids who struggle to identify themselves with, professional athletes or scholars.
Yo, the mess maker, what up? How you doing? I got a moose call for you. Just so you guys know, this is how a moose call looks when your hands are in your mouth.
Video games and sports allows them to get away from that for a moment and be kids again, and that's why I've used a lot of what I'm doing now to try bring the best out of youth through gaming, through coaching, through sport. I got into gaming as a kid more or less as like a getaway from, just things that were going on outside of my home. I grew up partly on the reserve, so there was at times, not as much to do unless you were playing sports. playing online gaming for the first time was just an amazing experience. The people I connected with, the games I had with my friends. Some of my best childhood memories came from playing video games. COVID happening, I was able to connect people, people who spent a lot of time at powwows, sports, right? Sporting events, community events, getting together and socializing. They didn't have that. That was all gone. It was taken away. And as Indigenous people, that's something we thrive on, something that we always look forward towards was, getting together and seeing everybody. There are a lot of Indigenous youth who have to grow up at such a young age, taking care of siblings, taking care of parents, right? Being responsible at a very young age. A plan I have is to start coaching a lot of these communities to give back to the youth who need it, right? So I have currently one community, Nistawâyâw, has reached out to ask me to do a basketball clinic there. It's the perfect blend, coaching, sport, and gaming, using those as an escape to just be a kid, be yourself. It's been an amazing experience coaching. It's been something that has been a really big part of my life, and I'll continue to do it till I can't walk anymore.
I wanted to speak a little bit about asema, tobacco. It is one of our 4 sacred medicines, and when we visit other communities, it is a way of respect of the land and the people that inhabit the territory. Our culture has many rich traditions. Up next, we head to Similkameen Valley, where we meet Les Lewis, who tells his stories through Indigenous art.
They are simple, but not simple. Using the pictographs and telling stories, it's like bringing these logs back to life and giving them another opportunity to shine. White hustle halt isqueast Milna and Shema isqueast Les Lewis. Hello, good day. My name's Milna. My English name's Les Lewis. My Okanagan name translates to wherever I go, I'm in the middle of things. I've been working on pictograph carvings now on story poles for about 10 years now. As an Okanagan, I wanted to find a style that I could identify with and bring to the present. And pictographs are the ancient markings that are left by our ancestors on the rocks. So now I've taken that inspiration, I've put that onto logs. The beauty of using a log and turning them into story poles is bringing them back to life. We cut down a log or a tree, we stripped it of its branches and its bark. It's exposed. I'm using different tools, different technology, and just making my own images and having my own visions and my own dreams about what I want to create. It's like I become one with the tool and I just bring those images out of the log, and I know it's one step closer to the finished product, which I already see in my mind. There's no more dust to take off now. When it's done, you know, you can run your fingers over the carvings and to just experience this art. Then just feel that energy and feel that connection and just enjoy the beauty that this land has to offer. And as an artist, this creates dialogue. This creates conversations among people that observe the art and just create that interest, and for the people to educate themselves on who we are as Okinawans and just give a little glimpse of how beautiful our land is and our culture is and our traditions. So it has opened up doors for me to be able to share a little bit of my culture, a little bit of my creativity, and to let others experience this art.
What I love about carving the most, I think, is almost all of the carvings I do are stories, and I love the stories. And I like the feeling of when you get immersed in carving, you sort of block everything else out and you're almost in a different land. According to my mom, I was 4.5 when I carved a small canoe with a native person in it and a paddle. One summer she took it and showed it to my grandfather, and he said, it's in the blood. He was a carver and his dad was a carver before him. One of the reasons I like teaching and passing on a lot of this knowledge is I like to see people move through 3 levels. I like to see them gain an awareness of Native art and stories and maybe the way of looking at the world. And then after they've got that awareness, quite often they'll develop an appreciation. And only after they have an awareness and appreciation can they gain a respect for it. The first time I met Jack was at Lee Valley Tools in Calgary, and we were carving a Zunaqua, which is a wild woman of the woods mask.
I came home with it after it was completely finished and had a spot in the wall for it. And every time I go by, it reminds me.
In seeing what Jack has done since he took one class from me, I only wish that half the people that I taught things would go on to do this kind of stuff.
After I took the workshop, I was hooked. Before I started, I was doing chainsaw carving, but it didn't work for me, and so I was looking for another way to express myself.
I think Jack is a very good example of someone who's gone through those 3 stages of awareness, appreciation, to the level of respect that he has for the art form. I think he's fallen in love with the art form. I only hope that a lot of the other people that I teach will go the same route that he's gone. I think he's done a marvelous job. The more we can share our cultures, the more we understand of each other, and the more we see each other as being just like ourselves, really. And I think that's a good thing.
May 5th is National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and Two-Spirit people. We hang our red dresses in solidarity and to acknowledge the women and girls and Two-Spirit people who have gone missing or murdered, and we honor their families. Next, we head to Kamloops, BC, where we meet up with a professional model who is empowering Indigenous women on this very important topic.
I want a whole army of instructors.
The chance of somebody trying to abduct you decreases significantly if other people notice you.
We teach aspiring models to walk with confidence. How do we protect these women? The goal is to prevent more Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people from going missing.
When I started modeling with Kim and taking the training, it was a turning point for me.
I used to be so shy, and she got me out of my shell.
We just took another victim off the street. When I was 10 years old, I wanted to learn how to powwow dance, and I was so excited. And I went to my grandmother's house after my first lesson, and she slapped me across the face and said, "You stay away from that place. We're not dirty Indians." And I didn't learn until so many years later how much abuse was laid upon the people. That's why my grandma didn't want me to admit that I was Indigenous. She was protecting me. Each and every one of you is important. Each and every one of you is beautiful.
The way that society is built, specifically with Indigenous women, it really knocks us down a peg every single step we take.
I went through like a huge period where I felt really uncomfortable in my own body, in my own skin.
When women are not presenting themselves in a confident way, they can become targets. Bring the legs over so that you fill any gaps.
Having Kim and everything that she does, it's kind of like she's taking your hand and guiding you towards the door where you can escape this feeling.
I've been a fashion model since 1972. That's where my skill set lies. It's important for me to be able to pass that along because it helped me to get out of situations that I didn't want to be in.
She wants girls to feel confident enough that they can hold their head up high when they're walking down the street because that protects them.
We can't seem to stop the predators from doing what they do, but we can start in small ways. My goal is now to train all of the models that I've trained to go out to smaller reservations and begin training there as well.
I started recruiting models for her, and I think it's important because I feel like we're still invisible in a way.
We don't just teach people how to walk. We teach people about their history. And to have this shared experience with all of the models that we're working with creates another link, another way for us to be able to move forward. Now we need to raise our voice. Now we need to bring it to the next level. And like the phoenix, we're coming up out of the ashes. The message is that we're here, we're human, and we are worthy.
A huge part of my life is teaching Anishinaabemowin and revitalizing the language with my granddaughter, Amara.
Mom.
Say bonjour.
Bonjour.
We enjoy doing word of the day, and today we're going to say child in Anishinaabemowin. Abanuchi. Again. Abanuchi. Miigwech. Next, we move on to Fort Frances, Ontario, where we meet up with Roy Tom, a residential school survivor who's made it his mission to teach and educate others in Anishinaabemowin.
Aha, bonjour. Aha, bonjour. Aha, bonjour. Aha, bonjour. Aha, bonjour. Aha, bonjour. Anishinaabemowin With Roy Tom.
If I can help one person learn the language, remember some of the language, I'll be happy to help one. If I help more than one, that'd be awesome. If you know more languages, the better.
Bonjour. Willi, Nijnikas. Wabos, Nindotim. Tangabe, Dunji. Tetequas, Niban. Skena. Be quick. She'll be quick. Be quick.
Anishinaabemowin? Huh? Kinodona? I started because I'm a residential school survivor and a 60 scoop survivor. A lot of the families lost their traditions, their language, culture, so everybody today is trying to get back into their language. I went to a water gathering in 2018 and I heard an elder there saying it's your responsibility to teach the language, however little you know or a lot. That's when he made me think, when he said it's your responsibility. It took me 6 months to think, how can I do that? A light bulb came on and that's when the word of the night came to my mind, and it's been going almost every day, every other night since 2018.
Du Chun Imiz.
Ninake Mano.
With the word of the night, we try not to use any English. Me, Ojibwe Moin, Anishinaabemowin, Kijeba Whiston, Nakwe Whiston, Onakshe Whiston, supper. For me, I try to teach anybody, but also the young ones. It's good for them to learn. Hopefully they'll catch on and use the word each day and teach their family at home that word. Even like pop, shiabo. Everybody loves shiabo.
Bonjour, journey to Indigenous, Makoda Tem, Mishkasemanasi Vingdunji, Wekele Benigan.
Kinodona, quick, Benigan, Kito. Aha, Miguet, Shuming Gwenen.
I guess I'm very fortunate. I didn't lose my language despite the traumas I went through. I don't know where I would be if I didn't know my language. I think it helps stay stronger if you know your traditions and language and culture. Hambe, Bindigan is come in. Kibichin, stop. The main thing is have fun with the words. It's okay to make a mistake. When we laugh at ourselves, then we won't forget that word when we say it funny or say it in a funny way.
Which Jalnong Benesse Dijnikas, Augush Doden, Kanoran Dunji.
He forgot.
Bakwaja Genes.
I'm not looking for fame, whatever. I just want to make sure we don't lose our Anishinaabemowin. That's part of my responsibility is to pass on the language and make sure the young ones, the teenagers, the youth, and the elders learn the language too.
Learning to understand Indigenous culture, history, and languages can open the door to enriching partnerships and relationships. Before we leave, we would like to thank you all for joining us on this journey. For more great Shaw Spotlight content, follow us on social media or check out shawspotlight.ca. Miigwech.